We talked with him on our radio show a number of years ago, and he has joined us again to talk about the late Larry King. We're going to visit with Tim Scowden from Latham, Ohio. Of course, now he's way off in New York. We'll talk more about that in just a bit. But first, this from Hometown Motors Incorporated. Cut in total professional comfort. Husqvarna. Available now at Hometown Motors Incorporated, 818 Eastern Avenue, Chillicothe. Tim, good to have you back with us again. And we were all saddened by learning the loss of Larry King. You had a personal connection with him for 5 years as an employee. I got to think you might have had some interaction with him after that as well.
I actually, I didn't have much interaction with him afterwards. And it wasn't anything personal or any sort of grudge or vendetta. It just didn't work out that way. Yeah. I know that some people, once the show went off the air, maintained friendships or relationships with him. Larry was an interesting guy, and a really good guy. You hear the cliche in Hollywood is, you ask someone about an A-list celebrity and they always say, oh, they're very generous. And Larry really was generous to a fault with his employees and everybody around him. He was just a good guy, and the stories he had were pretty phenomenal. And they weren't like, meeting the queen or king or something like that. It was the simple stuff, like stories from his past. Would you like to hear one?
Sure, yeah.
When Larry worked in Miami, this was before his radio show became syndicated. Financially, things were always tight for him. I mean, he grew up poor in Brooklyn, and I think he's talked about that a lot. But Larry also had an affinity for the track. He loved to go to the track and bet on a horse or a dog or whatever. And there was one particular day, he's told this story, that he wanted to go to the dog track. He had $10 and apparently drove a car that was a bit of a gas hole. So what he decided to do was put $5 worth of gas in the car, drive it halfway to the track, and he either walked or hitchhiked the rest of the way to the track.
Amazing. And
then after the race, went back to his car and drove home. So, he had a lot of hand-to-mouth stories, from his past. But during the time I knew him, that was far from the truth. Yeah. I mentioned his generosity. During the Obama inauguration in 2008, or 2009, I guess, January, at the last minute, the show decided to send the production assistant from Los Angeles with Larry to the inauguration, because this guy Brad was very good at handling Larry and helping him do whatever. Well, it was so quick, Brad just threw a bunch of stuff in a gym bag, jumped on the plane with Larry, because Larry flew private, and got to the inauguration, and they were outside working. And Larry said to Brad, "Where's your coat?" And he said, "I don't have a winter coat, so I wasn't able to bring it." At the end of the day, Brad went back to his hotel room, and at the front desk, they handed him a package, and it was from a local high-end department store. And it was this very expensive winter down jacket from Larry to Brad.
Tim, I remember a story that Larry told one time about his interviewing skills. And I had been kind of doing this myself, but I just thought it was because I was lazy, where I tried not to find too much out about my guest other than just the general, their name and their title and so forth. Because he said that if I find out too much about them, it takes away my natural curiosity to ask questions. And that kind of reaffirmed something that I had been doing. I just didn't realize that was what, the big guys were doing. Did you find that to be true, that he didn't do a whole lot of research on his guest?
How do I put this? Absolutely. Now, if it was, of course, Larry had a lot in his head, a lot of knowledge. If it was a sports star, baseball player, oh my God, Larry would already know everything there is to know. But yeah, in general, he was that way. And another thing, if you notice his interviews, if you look at a transcript of an interview he does, compare it to a transcript of an interview Bill O'Reilly was doing on Fox, you will see on the paper, it's little question, this is Larry's, little question, and then the answer goes on and on forever. If you would look at Bill O'Reilly's, the question would take up 2/3 of the page, and the answer was very little. He was all about letting the guest speak and tell their story. I think it was my first day there. One of my jobs was to compile his, what we call blue cards, all the information about the guest, but they were always put in a certain order because this is how we, the producers, envisioned the show going, from this topic to that topic to this topic to that. And so you would brief Larry on those. Usually when he was in makeup, right before the show, it went on at 6 o'clock Pacific time. So it's about 5:30, you're in the makeup room, briefing him on it. And the very first time I did that, he said, Tim, let me tell you something. Just keep this in mind. When that red light goes on over the camera, I can say whatever I want. And I was like, I'm sure you can respect that. These are the suggestions from the executive producer. And that's all you could do. There was never a dull moment working for him.
I worked when I was in Columbus with Bob Nunley, who is now still working at Channel 4. And I gleaned so much from Bob that I use still today. And I wondered if Larry had that same kind of impact upon people like yourself to be part of what you did from that point on.
Yeah, I mean, he was spot on with his approach to guests and the questions he would ask, unless it was a sports person. One time, Tim McGraw was in to talk about country music. And of course, Larry spent the first half of the interview talking about Tim McGraw's biological father, Tug McGraw. But anyway, yeah, they're working with Larry was an education. And the man was, before him, I worked on a show called Hard Copy, which was like tabloid celebrity news, really out there and sensational. And I would get frustrated. I was fortunate enough to be able to travel on vacations. And I would be very disappointed when I'd go to London and people would ask me where I work. And I would very proudly say Hard Copy. And they didn't know what I was talking about. However, for the 5 years that I worked for Larry King, any vacation I took, anywhere in the world, they knew who Larry King was. Yeah. And in every hotel lobby, you would see CNN International on, and it would be Larry King. He was a global celebrity. Yeah. So that I see that as that was the high point in my career in terms of working for a great organization.
Tim, I got to ask you, I can remember very well the interview that we did years back on the radio. And I can't remember if we asked this question. What takes a guy from Pike County, Ohio, to the big time. You talk a little bit about that.
You have to know what you're doing. You know, you have to be good and adaptable and be a good writer and have a good gut when it comes to television, what works and what doesn't. But you know what? There are probably a million of those people out there, and that might be conservative. There are probably a million people out there who have the same gut, the same knowledge, the same abilities that I had. But I got lucky. Long story short, I went to work in Dallas part-time for a woman I'd never met before and quite frankly didn't like. And we ended up becoming, in addition to coworkers, good friends, and she dragged me all over the country. And then when it came time, like 7 or 8 jobs later, and I was ready to try something other than celebrity news, she put me in touch with her friend who ran Larry King Live. It wasn't easy getting in even then, but you know, you have to keep at it, and you have to keep making contact with people. But remember, there's a fine line between keeping at it and making them feel like you're stalking them, being a nuisance. Because I've been on both ends of that. So I mean, it was skill, but it was also a lot of luck that got me there. I'm just glad I was able to do that.
I think that can be said for a lot of things. We were in radio for so long together, and then this opportunity has come together to reunite the team again. And a lot of it's been pure luck. And here we are. Mm-hmm. So, Tim, I know that you've got other things to get to and everything, but we do appreciate you taking time to join us and to share some knowledge and background about Larry King. We have enjoyed watching him over the years, listening to him. Mike was talking about hearing him first on radio back in the 60s when he was in Miami. And,
right.
And when I came to Chillicothe working at WBEX, where Mike was, Larry King was the afternoon guy. So a great tie-in. So we thought it would be important to bring a Pike County native into this as well. So
happy to talk about it. I have, and you can cut this out if you don't want to use it, but I have another story about Larry, something from his past that I don't think I heard him tell very many people, but he used to be on CNN, and the program that he led into was Aaron Brown. Mm-hmm. This was back before Anderson Cooper was a thing. And during the last break, before Aaron Brown, during the commercial break, at the end of the show, Larry would toss to Aaron on screen, Larry on the left, Aaron on the right. And before the break or during the break, the control rooms in Atlanta and LA would connect. So Larry and Aaron could hear each other and see each other, and they could talk to make sure the mics worked and all that. And they would always go off on some 2-minute tangent. And the subject of the show had been somebody who was a thief. And keep in mind, this is not on the air, but we can see and hear this in the control room. Aaron said, I stole something when I was a kid, Larry. I shoplifted with my mother, and she dragged my butt back into the store, and I had to apologize and give him back the chewing gum. And he said, Larry, you ever steal anything? Larry said, yeah, I did. Larry used to be a really heavy smoker before all his heart problems. He said, I stole a pack of cigarettes. He said, I was in the New York subway. I was out of cigarettes. I didn't have any money on me. So I broke the glass on the cigarette machine and stole a pack of cigarettes. And Aaron said, how old were you, Larry? And we were all expecting, 12, 13, 40. And everybody who could see and hear that just fell out. I mean, he was a very colorful person. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, I could see him turn around and say, last week.
Yeah. Hey, I was short. I had my driver's stop and I stole a pack.
That's right. Tim, it's always great to catch up with you. We appreciate you making time for us here today. And let's get together again soon when you come back home one of these days.
Sure. Anytime you want.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay. Thank you, guys.